Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and what's going on here? Oh, okay. So this is Mr. Storm, and in this video, I am going to walk you through how to create a modal. Now, we're going to do some CSS and JavaScript and HTML in this project. Notice that I've created a new project already, and I've gotten rid of the CSS and the JavaScript files that came with it. We're just going to do all of this in one page here. We're going to do it all on the same page. Oh, let me move this over just a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the link that I don't need anymore. I'm going to get rid of that script that I don't need anymore. Let's change this to modal example. Now, this isn't going to be showing you exactly how to build your flashcard website. This is going to show you what you kind of need in order to build the flashcard. Does that make sense? This isn't going to show you, I'm not going to build a flashcard website. I'm just going to build a very simple modal that will pop up on my screen whenever I click a button. That's all I'm going to do. Let's talk about the HTML really quick. First, I'm just going to put an H1 here just to have some content on the page. And then I'm going to need a button. Now, this button is going to have an ID associated with it. Now, the ID that I want is, let's just do my button, my BTN. IDs are important because JavaScript is going to use that ID to associate certain lines of code with that element on the page. Okay. Let's do open modal button. Okay. So I'm going to have a button. What else? Well, I need to build the modal on the page. So the HTML, I have to have HTML elements building that modal on my page. So let's create a div. We're going to give this an ID of my modal. You can give it whatever IDs you want. It really doesn't matter. And I'm going to give it a class called modal. We're going to create that class in just a little bit. Now inside of that div, I'm going to have another div. And I'm going to set this class equal to modal-content. Again, we're going to build that class in just a minute. And then I'll have a span element class equals close. And then I'm going to put this keyword here, or this thing, times. So what that's going to do is that's just filling in some content there. Span. All right. So that's going to be our close button. So, okay. So what this is doing here, this ampersand times with the semicolon, that's going to create a big X, a fat X, like a, yeah, you get what I'm saying. So we're going to click on the X and it's going to make the modal go away. Then we'll have a paragraph inside. We'll say, I don't know, some text in the modal. Okay, and then I need to close off this div here. And I need to close off this div here. Okay, so that is all the HTML. Now, as you can see right there, the modal is popping up, but I don't want it to pop up, right? I only want the H1 and the button to show up, but at least I know that something's going right? I can at least see, the information. I'm going to let my dog out 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So that'll at least let us see that we have some content on there. So now let's start writing some CSS. So I'm going to go up here to create those classes that I need to create. I'm going to create a style section inside the head of my website. Now the first class, let's create the modal class. So modal, and let's see. I want to display none. I want to turn this off. I want its position to be fixed. I want the Z index to be 1, which essentially is going to mean it's going to be on top of everything else on the screen. Let's see, padding, top, let's give it 100 pixels. Left will be 0. Top will be 0. Say width 100%. Height 100%. Overflow will be auto. Now what this is going to do is this basically is going to enable scrolling if you need it to. I don't know how much content you're going to put in your modal, but that's there. That's for you, available. And let's set a background color. And let's see. Let's do 0, 0, 0. We'll test that out a little bit. Actually, let's do 0, 0, 0, 0.4. Give it some opacity. Let's do 2. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just setting a fallback value. So we'll do black. And then black with opacity as the fallback. Okay. All right, so that's our modal class, and that's going to be applied to that div. All right. Next, we need the modal content class. So whatever the content inside the modal is going to be. So let's do dot modal content. Background color. Let's set this to a gray. Fee. Margin, we'll set it to auto, so it centers itself. Padding will be 20 pixels. Border, let's make it 1 pixel solid, and we'll give it a kind of a black color. Let's do 888. And width will be 80%. Okay, now we need to set up the close button, the button that's going to allow us to close our modal. Ooh. Come on, close. So the color will be we'll give it a floating right value so it goes to the right side of the box there. Font size, because as you can see right here, it's really tiny. We're going to make the font size 28 pixels. Oh, yep, pixels. And then we'll say font weight. And we'll make it bold. So that's our close button. Now let's change the hover and the focus for the close. So dot close hover, and dot close focus. Oh. And let's just set the color to a lighter color. Let's do, or a darker color. Text decoration will be none, and cursor will be pointer. All right. I think that's all of our CSS. So now what we need to do is we need to get into the actual JavaScript. So let's go down here, and below our div there, let's create a script tag, and then we will close off the script tag. Now everything inside a script tag is going to be JavaScript. We're basically telling our compiler, hey, we got some JavaScript in here. So the first thing we need to do is create a link to the modal object. So we're going to say var modal equals document.get element by ID. That's why we used an ID up here. So the ID is my modal. My modal. There we go. Then we need to associate some script with our button. So we'll say var btn. Now var stands for variable, by the way. If you've ever taken a programming class, you'll know what the word variable means. And if you take my HTML5 applications development class, we get very heavy into what variables are in the context of JavaScript. Document.get element by ID. Ooh. And we'll say my btn, my button. Okay. We also want to create a variable that associates with the closing button, right? So let's say document.get element by ID. And actually, no, I don't want the ID. I want document.get element by class name. So document.get element by class name. And that is going to be close. And then we're also going to do this little guy, right back here. Okay, perfect. All right, now, so that's setting up our variables. The next thing I want to do is I want to have that button variable that I created up here. I want to set that button to essentially open up the modal, right? So the button dot on click, which means when I click the button, we're going to say it equals function. And the function is going to be modal.style.display equals block. Meaning when I click on that button, it's going to display the modal. It's going to change its display type up here from none to block. So let's actually test that out. We're at a spot where we can actually test it. So we'll let it run. Ooh. Wait a second. Something has happened. Oh, I didn't close off my style tag. That's why. That's what's going on. I knew the text looked off. All right. There we go. Now we have modal example. Let's click open modal. Now we're getting an error. Document.get element by class name is not a function. Let's see, did I spell something wrong? Elements by class name. I need an S there. So it's document.get elements by class name. All right. Now, the reason why we're doing it that way is because we might have multiple modals on the page, and we want to make sure that we can close them individually. All right, so now let's run it. Okay, and open the modal. Block is not defined. What do you mean? Oh, I forgot quotes. There are all kinds of errors in this now, but you guys are seeing me troubleshoot. All right, now something works. So now we have the modal, we have our close button. The close button doesn't do anything yet because we haven't programmed that yet, but we will in just a minute. But now we know the modal actually opens when we click. All right, good. So now let's do the same thing here on the span. Let's create an on click equals function. And let's set the modal.style.display equal to none. And that's just going to allow us to turn off the modal whenever we run it, when we open it. And click. So now the modal can turn on and off. by clicking the buttons. Now, we also want to be able to click anywhere outside of the modal to click it, to make it go away. This may seem like it's difficult to do, but it's really not. Let me show you very quickly how to do it. We're actually almost done. So we're going to say window.onClick equals function, and we're going to pass it in an event. And we'll say if event.target equals modal, then modal.style.display equals none. Okay, so what that's going to do is it's basically going to listen for any event, basically me clicking somewhere. It's going to listen for a click, and that's going to pass in an event, and it's going to turn off the modal if we're outside of that modal. So let's try that. So there we go. So now if I click inside the modal, it doesn't go away. If I click outside, it does go away. And I also can click the X and make it go away. So at this point, we've really just created a modal. Now you can create more essentially by copy and pasting these, and instead of my modal, it'll be my modal 1 or my modal 2 or whatever, right? Remember that for every new modal you add, you'd have to add another variable, assigning it to that. Actually, yeah, you'd have to add another variable, and then you'd have to add basically you have to copy and paste all of this. So the flashcard site has 4 buttons and modals. So you're basically going to do 4 of these. All right. So play around with this. You shouldn't have to double up on the CSS because that's universal. But see how you can make multiple modals on the page. Here's one thing you can do. You can use the same modal, but you can just change the text inside the modal itself. For example, you can say, if we click button 2, then we'll give the paragraph element an ID of, my text. And then let's say, let's add another button. Question 1, right? So we'll say down here var btn button 1 equals document.get element by ID. So we can associate to the ID we've just created question 1. And then down here we can say btn1.onClick equals function. Oh, I spelled function wrong. Function. Modal.style.display equals block. And we're also going to add, we need a variable reference to that. We'll say Q1, and we'll say document.get element by ID is going to be my text, right? Then down here we can say Q1 dot inner HTML equals what's the answer to the question? Let's say, I don't know, 4,900 and whatever. We'll just put in a number. So essentially what this is going to do is it's going to change the inner HTML of the Q1 element, which is this paragraph, and it's going to change that to something else. So let's run that, and it does. So you're just going to have a different on-click with each of your questions. You can use the same, the same modal style display, all of that stuff. So you don't have to change any of the display events of the modal. You just change the inner HTML change for each of the answers, if that makes sense. All right, please let me know if you have any questions about this. This is quite a bit to think about, but knowing how to do this, you should be able to make a flashcard website just as easy as pie. All right, see you guys later. Thanks for paying attention, and I'll see you next time.